Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to take a look at how to set up our paper on our drafting board, get it set correctly, and also how to lay out and complete our border and title strip that we're going to use for all of our necessary drawings. Now, the first thing that we need to do is we need to get our paper set on our workspace. So I've got a sheet of paper here. This is just standard 8.5 by 11. And we need to make sure that we're setting this up more or less parallel with our parallel rule. So I'm going to bring my parallel rule up a little bit so my paper is close to the center of my drawing board space. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide my paper underneath my drawing board and align the bottom edge of my paper with the bottom edge of my parallel rule. And get that lined up like that. So my paper is approximately centered in my workspace. Next, I want to secure my paper to the drawing board. And to do that, we're going to use our dot tape. So I'm going to get 4 of these dots out of here. And I'm going to go ahead with my parallel rule in place. And I'm going to secure the top corners of my paper. And I want to make sure I'm not covering too much of the paper with the dots. Otherwise, they're going to get in the way of the drawing that I'm going to complete. Now with the tops secured, I can gently lift up on my parallel rule and slide it up and expose the bottom corners. And now I can get those taped down as well. And this is going to be our process for all the drawings that we complete during our manual drafting unit, is getting our paper set on our workspace and then completing a correct border and title strip. So now I've got my paper secured. I've got my 4 dots holding it down. I've got my parallel rule here. And the first thing I need to do to get my border and title strip laid out is to find the center of my paper. The reason we work from the center out as opposed to working from the edges in is that not every piece of paper is exactly square. And so we need to make sure we're all starting from a common center point. Now, I've got some stuff on my paper, so I'm going to use my horsehair brush to get that cleaned up. That helps me avoid getting smudges on my paper. And now I need to find the center of my paper. To do that, I'm going to draw diagonal lines from corner to corner and from corner to corner on my paper. Now you may, depending on your drawing kit, you may have a straight edge that's long enough to go corner to corner like this, or you may not. If you do, we're simply going to align it with the corners, and then I'm going to hold it down, and using a 4H lead in my lead pointer, I'm going to very gently draw the center part of that line. I don't need to draw the full line because all I care about is finding my center point right in here. Now, if you don't have a straight edge that's long enough to draw that diagonal from corner to corner, you can use your 2 smaller triangles. And the way we're going to do this is we are going to arrange our triangles so that the long edge, the hypotenuse, is facing each other. And when I hold these together like this, it creates one continuous straight line. And now I can align in the corner up here and in the corner down here. So that is aligned, and now I can hold down just one of the triangles and move the other out of the way. And again, using a very light stroke with my 4H lead, all I need to do is cross my existing center line. Okay? Now, the 4H lead draws so lightly that for this example, I'm actually going to go ahead and load in an H hardness lead, and and I'm going to go ahead and point this out. And I'm doing this just so that you guys can see more clearly in our example what I'm doing. But you will be drawing with very light strokes using a 4H lead when you're in this stage of the drawing exercise. Okay? Now, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to darken so that you can see. I'm going to darken the lines that I've already drawn here. And again, this is for your benefit in this video so that you can clearly see what's going on. Normally, you would absolutely not draw this dark at this stage. Otherwise, you're going to have a hard time cleaning up your paper at the end and making sure that everything is done correctly. So I'm going to focus our camera up here real quick. There we go. And now you can see this is my center point. Okay? So now, as you can see in the directions that are posted in the classroom, the width of our border needs to be 10.5 inches. So what that means is we're going to start at our center point right here, and we're going to measure 5.25 inches to the right and 5.25 inches to the left. And that's going to give us the width of our border. To do that, we want to draw a horizontal line straight through this center point so that we can get our border set properly. So I'm going to align my parallel rule with the center point of my paper, and then always dragging. You never want to push your pencil in the way that it's pointed. You always want to drag it like this. So I'm going to drag a horizontal line right through that center point from edge to edge. And again, this is much darker than the way you are going to do it. Now I can take my architect scale, and we're working in full scale right now. So that's going to be the scale marked with the 16. And I want to go 5.25 inches to the left and 5.25 inches to the right. So if I find 5.25 inches right here and put that on my center point, now I can measure out to 0 on the left and to 10.5 on the right, 10.5 being the total width of the border area. So I'm going to come out to my 0 point, and I'm going to put just a little mark, and I'm going to come to my 10.5, and I'm going to put a little mark. Now, at these 2 points, this is where I need to draw the vertical edges of my border. So I'm going to slide my parallel rule down so that the bottom of my paper is exposed. And now, depending on the size of the triangles you have, if you have smaller triangles like this, you will only be able to draw part of your border, and then you will need to move your parallel rule up and draw the top part. You never want to use your scale to draw a line because it's very difficult to keep it lined up straight, and it's got variations in the edges. It's not going to draw a perfectly straight line. So we're always using our triangles and our parallel rule to draw these lines. So to get my vertical line, I'm going to put my triangle on my parallel rule, and I'm going to hold it snug so that the bottom edge is tight here. And I'm going to make sure it's properly aligned. And now, dragging my pencil, I'm going to draw a vertical line. And you may have noticed that the top edge of the triangle raised up a little bit, and so my line right here is crooked. So this would be a spot where I can grab my eraser shield. I can cover the part of the line that I need to remove, and then I can erase without worrying about potentially erasing part of my work that I want to maintain. Now I can use my horsehair brush to clean off my paper, and I can redraw that. If your triangle is large enough to reach across the entire length of your paper, Then the process is going to be the same. Hold it tight against the parallel rule. I'm going to put a finger up here at the top so that I don't repeat the mistake I made last time. Make sure it's aligned correctly. And I'm drawing a vertical line from bottom to top. Because on this side my triangle was not long enough to make it all the way to the top, I'm going to slide my parallel rule up, reposition my triangle over top of the line that I'm drawing. And now, holding up at the top as well, I can extend that line all the way to the top. So now I have the sides of my border in place, and I need to add the bottom and the top. So according to the directions that are posted in the classroom, the distance from bottom to top of the border area is 8 inches. So I'm going to set my scale with 4 inches on my center line, and then I can come and I can put a little mark at 0 and a mark up here at 8. And that is now the location that I can draw my 2 horizontal lines. So I'll bring my parallel rule into position and draw my horizontal lines all the way across. Bring my parallel rule up to the top and draw my line across. So now I've got my border finished, and again, as a reminder, you're going to draw much lighter than what you just saw me do. You should barely be able to see your lines when you're finished drawing with a 4H lead, okay? I'm drawing with an H lead just so that you can clearly see the work that needs to be done here. And you need to periodically repoint your lead, which is what I just did. Now that we've got our border in place, we need to add the title strip space at the bottom. And if you look closely at the directions in the classroom, you can see that we need to add 3 more lines, each spaced out at 1/8 of an inch. So I'm going to take my scale and I'm going to align it over on one of the edges, and I'm going to put 3 marks, each at 1/8 of an inch. 1, 2, 3. Now that I've got my 3 marks added, so again, I've got the bottom line of my title strip, and I've added 3 marks at 1/8 of an inch. 1, 2, and 3. A common mistake is kids look and they see that there are 3 lines and they add 4 marks here instead of 3. You only need 3. With those 3 marks added, I can now bring my parallel rule into position and draw my 3 horizontal lines across to create the lines I need for my title strip. Again, drawing very lightly and always dragging the pencil, never pushing it. So now I've got 3 spaces with 4 total lines, the bottom line of the border and the 3 lines that I've just added, each spaced at 1/8 of an inch. Now we need to add the vertical dividers for our title strip. According to the directions in our classroom, the first space is 1 inch long, so I'm going to set my scale with 0 perfectly in line with the the left edge of my title strip, and I'm going to put a little tick mark at 1 inch. The next space is 2 1/4 inches. So from here, I'm just going to count 1, 2, that puts us at 3, and then I add a quarter. So at 3 1/4, I put another mark. The next opening is 3 1/4 inches. So I'm going to count from 3 1/4, 1, 2, 3, and add a quarter. So that next mark is at 6 1/2. And then the last opening is 3 inches. So from 6 1/2, my next mark is going to be at 9 1/2 inches. So I've got my 4 marks lined out, and now I don't need to move my parallel rule, all I need is a triangle, and I can draw the vertical lines that are going to mark out the boundaries for the boxes in my title strip. So now I've got my border and my title strip all laid out. What I want to show you now is the process for getting this properly darkened in so that it's ready to be used. And normally your darkening would happen when you've finished all aspects of your drawing. So if you were placing some sort of drawing in this drawing space that we've created, you would wait until the very end to darken that in. For instructional purposes, I'm going to place a new border and title strip on here that is much lighter than this one and show you which aspects need to be darkened in. And then hopefully you'll also be able to see that by drawing lightly at the beginning, when you come back and darken those light lines, these construction lines here, for example, in the center, finding the center and finding the edges, will just disappear into the background of our drawing because of how light they were initially drawn. So let me get that other border and title strip laid out, and I'll show you the darkening process. So now I've reattached a previous drawing with much lighter lines, but I think you can still see that those lines are there. So now we need to talk about which aspects of this we need to darken in. So we need to darken the full border, so the top, the right edge, the very bottom line, and the left edge. We also need to darken in the top line of our title strip, not the middle two lines. Those are just guidelines to help us get our text positioned correctly. And then we also need to darken in the vertical divider lines within the title strip. So to do that, we're going to need our triangles, or a triangle, and our parallel rule. And I'm going to go ahead and start by darkening in all of my vertical lines. So I'm going to align my triangle tightly against my parallel rule at the bottom, get it aligned with the left edge of my drawing, and now with my H hardness lead, this is the softer of the two leads, I'm going to draw my vertical line, and now I need to be careful to stop at the corners. I don't want to extend beyond that. Next, I'm going to move over, and I'm going to get the first dividing line in my title strip. And again, I'm being careful to only go from the top line to the bottom line. I'm not extending beyond that. So we'll catch all of these divider lines. And you'll notice I'm brushing off my paper in between. That's because this soft lead tends to leave a lot of dust behind. And if you're not careful sliding your triangle over it, you can actually smear a lot of that across your paper. Now I'm going to carefully draw the right edge of my title strip. Just like before when we were drawing, if your triangle is not long enough to make this line in one continuous pass, you'll need to draw part of it, then move your parallel rule up and draw the remainder. With all of my vertical lines drawn, now I can go ahead and I can draw my horizontal lines. And because of that dust I was talking about, I'm going to start at the top and work my way down so I'm not dragging my parallel rule across the dust left behind by my pencil. So there's my top. I'm going to relocate down here to the top of my title strip. And then I'm going to draw the very bottom of the border and title strip. And now you can see that these lighter construction lines in the center and the construction lines down here in the title strip are still there. You can still see them, but because of how dark everything else on our drawing is, it sort of fades into the background. The last thing we need to do is we need to add our text into these boxes. And to do that, we're going to use all capital letters, very similar to the way you saw the writing done in the video we watched in class. If you haven't watched that, we've got a great video that talks about proper architectural lettering. But that's how you're going to do that. I'm going to move this camera a little bit closer here and try and get you a little bit better view of the lettering process here. Get that focused up. So we're going to start over here on the left with our date. So today is September 8th. So keeping my text in between the two center guidelines. I'm not touching the top or bottom darkened lines. I'm drawing in the center. So 9/8/2021. And you can see those guidelines help me size my text correctly. They also give the appearance that the text is floating within this text box. Next, we're going to put our school name. So this is going to be Fossil Ridge High School. We can abbreviate with HS. Clean off the point of my pencil. The next space is going to include your drawing title. For our very first exercise, we're going to title this Border and Title Strip. And the final box is our name. Now, again, you notice that all of my text is neat and legible and centered in this space. If you are using any lowercase letters, you're wrong. If your letters are touching either the top or bottom of your title strip, you're wrong. If your letters are not neat and legible, you're wrong. This all needs to be done very neatly and with high precision because your writing and your title strips are going to tell your clients a lot about your ability to work neatly. So it's really important to work on getting this correct. So now, because of how light the rest of these construction lines are, I don't have any erasing to do. I can go ahead and remove this paper from my board, and it's ready to be turned in. That's going to be our process for setting up our title strip for all the drawings we're going to do in this class. Keep in mind, when you're working on your title strip for other drawings, you want to leave the drawing title blank and make sure you title it appropriately based on the particular drawing that you're working on.